Hi, I'm Jeff Van Gundy, and you're listening to Thunderbus.
Welcome to Thunderbus with your hosts Watson and Bones.
I'm Watson.
And I'm Bones.
We get serious about the Thunder on this podcast.
But we don't get too serious.
Bones, joining us on the bus today through the miracle of technology, is a man who is much more successful than you or I will ever be. He was the coach of the Golden State Warriors and the Sacramento Kings and is the current coach at the University of Arkansas. And that man is Coach Eric Musselman. Coach, welcome to the bus.
I appreciate you guys having me on, Watson and Bones. Look forward to having a good discussion today.
Awesome. So we're going to talk Arkansas a little bit, and then we'll get into the NBA. So my first question,
great.
I don't know if you know this, but you're only the second coach in Arkansas history to win 20 games in his first season, which Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson did not do. What was Arkansas's best win this year?
You know, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think certainly in non-conference, we won at the buzzer at Georgia Tech in a non-conference game in Atlanta, and then we also won in Assembly Hall at Indiana. So I think those two games stand out from a non-conference standpoint. And then a third really good win for us non-conference was TCU at home. So those three games, and then I think, you know, in conference, we had some good games. At Alabama was a nice win for us, and you know, we were a ball club that had a limited roster as far as healthy bodies and scholarships, and we were down one scholarship, and we had 3 players sitting out, so we were actually minus 4 scholarships, and then we were in a really good position through most of the season until our star off guard Isaiah Joe ended up with an injury. He hurt his knee. He actually played on it for 2 games and then rehabbed, missed 5 games, and then came back. And we felt towards the end of the year, once we got Isaiah back, we thought going into the SEC tournament we had some good rhythm. And then obviously that was cut short.
Right. Now you referenced some of your personnel limitations. I saw you guys switch the pick and roll a lot this year. Was that because of your personnel? Like, would you ideally like to play more ice or drop coverage?
You know, I mean, the way we played pick and roll was we've switched everything basically for a 4-year time frame in college basketball. We played no zone defense, whatever. Middle pick and roll, we have weaked it or iced it in the middle some. Certainly with the 7'3" center, Connor Vanover, you know, we will be, you know, changing our pick and roll coverage. We're not going to want, you know, to switch or anything like that with the 7'3" guy.
You'll probably drop him, right?
You will probably drop him and watch a lot of Lopez film with the Milwaukee Bucks and kind of drop to the level of the role man is the way that we've been spending time during the off season thinking and talking about it.
Awesome. You know, they call Brook Lopez Splash Mountain because he hits those threes and he's tall like a mountain. Plus, I hear he's a big Disney fan. So,
Coach, what's something that makes you proud of this team this year?
You know, I think any first-year coach, like what you want to do is you want to try to establish an identity. You want your team to play with a theme. You know, we certainly felt like playing hard was an overriding theme of our team, although we didn't play well at Missouri and we didn't play well, you know, maybe at Florida and at, you know, Tennessee. So maybe 3 games, which happens to any good team in the country. And then I think we've kind of established an identity of who we are, meaning, you know, we're a man-to-man defensive team. We're a team that will take threes if we're open. We're a team that plays with good pace but not reckless pace. So I think all of that was kind of established. So all of our returning players will have a good feel for our terminology and things like that. And all of it's NBA related. So, that's extremely important as well for our guys that want to play at the next level.
Awesome. Another question for you. So as a college coach, you have conflicting incentives when a player wants to leave and go to the league, to the NBA. On one hand, you would love to have him on your team. On the other hand, you want him to succeed. So how do you deal with that, especially if the player's chances of making it are, might be slim?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really think it's conflicting. I think that it's you want to put all of your players in the best possible position to succeed in life, whether that's, in the business world, whether that's continuing to play basketball. I think the one thing that, is interesting with the NBA, I have a little bit different perspective having coached in the NBA D-League, having coached in college, having coached overseas, and having coached 2 NBA teams. So I have incredible respect for not how hard it is to make an NBA roster. We all know it's really hard to make an NBA roster, but it's extremely hard to make it a career.
Yeah.
And I think those are some of the discussions that you have to have with young student athletes. For instance, if we go back to Nevada, Cameron Oliver, after his sophomore year, Cam tested the waters. He felt, and a person that was helping him felt like he was definitely going to be a second-round pick. I did all the research that I potentially could with all my friends or colleagues in the NBA that I've developed relationships with over years and years. I came back with the feedback that you're not going to get drafted. Cam was still very confident that he would. He actually flew with his girlfriend, Alicia, to New York and sat in the stands thinking that he was going to hear his name called. He did not get drafted. He played in the D-League for a while. Now he's playing overseas. And interesting, Cam got really good feedback from the NBA early entry, feedback that guys get when they're underclassmen. And then I can fast forward to Cody and Caleb Martin, 2 guys that got pretty good feedback from the early entry committee, but still felt like they had room to improve. And those guys came back and played a senior year. There was a lot of people that said, hey, don't come back to college because you've already sat out a year. You're going to be old. The NBA doesn't like older, experienced players. You actually would be 5-year college kids. And I, told them that's not the truth, that you're going to be bigger, stronger, more experienced when you go to vet camp. And the key is to have that career, not just play or not get drafted. And those 2 guys, we talked through things. They made a decision to come back. They played on a top 10 team for 17 straight weeks. One of them got drafted in Cody Martin. And then both of them ended up playing in the NBA and starting games this year in their rookie season. It's hard for any rookie to start games. And Caleb Martin, the last NBA game he played in, went 5 of 6 from 3-point. So, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. Some players really listen and you discuss feedback, and other guys stick with their inner circle. And all a college coach can do is to try to provide the best, education on what they're hearing, and then it's ultimately up to the player. And I think with all of us, the more players you have play in the NBA, the easier it is for you to recruit. And certainly what you want to do at the college level is promote all your players the best possible way that you can.
Yeah, definitely. So you touched a little bit on your time in the NBA. Can you kind of talk about what makes the experience of being a college coach different from being an NBA coach?
Well, I think that, we could spend weeks and weeks on the difference, but I think in college you're dealing with basketball a lot of the time, but you're also dealing with a lot of other things. There's student athletes, there's academics, there's social things. You want the student athlete to walk away with a great experience. These should be the 4 best years of their lives. So in the NBA, it's a business. You walk into practice, you conduct practice, you get guys skill development blasts, you go back, you watch film. It's basketball in the NBA. 24/7. In college, there's just so many other aspects that you're dealing with. And then when you get into the actual game, you're talking about an 8-minute longer game in the NBA. You're talking about the rules of 4 quarters instead of 2 halves. You're talking about playing 3 or 4 games a week instead of 1 or 2 games a week at the collegiate level. So depth becomes much more important at the pro level. And then you're talking about in college, there's so many baseline out-of-bounds situations. And at the NBA level, there's so many more side out-of-bounds situations. I wish that the basketball world could get together, meaning men's basketball and women's basketball. Right now, we have 2 sets of rules. Women have 4 quarters. I wish we could all, with FIBA, the NBA, college, men's and women's, WNBA, high school, across the country, I wish we could all have the same rules so as not to confuse the fans and the spectators. Because right now, you watch an Olympic game, there's a lot different nuances that go into the game than if you watch an NBA game. And the same thing if you turn the channel, you watch a college game, and then it can be even more confusing when you maybe watch a women's game as far as the rules go. And so I wish that we would have a little bit more uniform in those aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. At least we don't still have that thing where they used to do in women's basketball where it was 3-on-3 on opposite halves of the court where there were...
Iowa State rules, Iowa girls rules, yep.
And that stuff was bizarre. So during your time in the NBA, I don't know if you remember this, but your Warriors team swept LeBron 2-0 during his rookie season. Now, he did average 33 points a game, but you held him to 41% shooting. What do you remember about LeBron as a rookie, and do you remember how you schemed to defend him?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, with LeBron, we wanted to try to keep him out of transition. We wanted to try to keep him off the foul line. Those were the 2 main things. We wanted to try to beat us from over the top. Obviously, he put up big numbers. We felt like, normally we really try to focus on trying to shut down the star. With LeBron, because he was a rookie, we felt the passing, it certainly at that point wasn't like it is now, where he'll just pick you apart if you help or overhelp. And so we kind of played him a little bit more straight up with the thought to just try to keep your body in front of him as much as possible. And, obviously if he's averaging 33, he had 2 really good games, but at the end of the day, as a coach or a player, you're just trying to figure out a way to how to win the game. So, but I look back at, Dwayne Wade, we had paint rules where we called it paintball, and you were never allowed to come out of the lane when you guarded Dwayne Wade.
Wow.
And it really frustrated him. Now, certainly in years 2 and 3, you would not be able to do that. But in his rookie year, we felt that was the best way to play him. When we played Allen Iverson, we called it boxes and elbows. Whenever he had the ball, we had the other 4 players sprint to both elbows and both boxes, and it was almost like a box in one. But it was only when he had the ball. And interesting, some of those defensive tactics work, some of them don't work. But it's interesting when a guy's, inbounding the ball on SOB situations, and he might look over at you and, say, hey, this is bothering me, or, hey, I'm going to pick this thing apart. And with Kobe, we used to force him, one quarter we might force him to the right hand and overhelp and overflub to that way. Another quarter we might switch it to the left hand. Third quarter we might play him straight up, and then fourth quarter, depending on if any of that worked, we would go to that. So those are some of the things that we've tried to do. I think you got to kind of create special rules with special players.
Coach, what was it like to coach Ron Artest? What is something that people might misunderstand about him?
Well, Meta World Peace is like, he's really charismatic. My 2 sons, were junior high and elementary. So was Ron's son. So was Mike Bibby's sons. And every weekend, because there's good weather in Sacramento in the winter, on Saturdays and Sundays, our kids would all play football in the parking lot, just touch football. And Ron is a good guy. He's very, very charismatic. It's very interesting because if you lined up every characteristic that you would want in a great individual defender, he has them all, meaning, hey, I want to guard this. I want to guard Kobe. If someone else is getting scored on, I want to guard the center now. I'll front him. He'll be physical with the guy. He'll block guys out. He'll dive on the floor for loose balls. But then as a player, the one challenge with Ron was getting him to be a help defender off the ball, because he would want to face guard Kobe away from the ball because he was so competitive. He didn't want Kobe to even catch the ball, where we might need help defense if Kobe was in the weak side corner. So I think a lot of that stuff is interesting with players. I think with everybody, I think with coaches, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. And I certainly think sometimes with players, it can be the same way. A player's greatest strength can be his greatest weakness as well. But I loved coaching Ron Artest. He's one of the most competitive human beings that I've ever been around. He hated to lose. But there are quite a few really good stories having coached him as well that you didn't know if you'd really experienced, but certainly we did.
I bet. So I really love this, like how open you are with talking about strategy. It's great to get a coach to talk about kind of how you play the game, how you adapt, and on kind of a 10,000-foot level, the NBA and basketball in general is moving more and more towards pace and space, shooting more and more threes. But there are always trends. This isn't going to go forever. So what do you see as the counter to pace and space? What strategic adjustment could cause teams to shoot fewer threes in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're kind of asking a guy who really believes in taking that away, because this year we were number one in the entire NCAA in defending the three ball. We had the best three ball defense in the NCAA because we put a premium. We have a staff that has NBA experience. Clay Mosier was with the Lakers with their analytics department as a coach the last 7 years.
Earl Boykins.
And so Earl Boykins is on staff. So from a staff standpoint, we understand you try to take away layups, try to take away free throws attempted, and try to take away the three ball. And although we were really undersized and had a small team, so we weren't going to out defensive rebound teams. But what we could do is we could get out in the crowd and take away airspace and make people floor it and make people put it on the deck. And that was kind of a neutralizer for us because we were a pretty good three-point shooting team. So what we lacked in shot blocking and what we lacked in defensive and offensive rebounding, we tried to create a niche for ourselves, and that was defending the three ball. So to answer your question, I think, you've got to have guys that are multi-skilled, multi-positional players. It's really hard to take away the three and take away the pace and space if you're immobile. And so I think that's why you're seeing so many guys like Draymond Green playing the 5 spot, because they can score it at the offensive end or pass it in pace and space. They can run dribble handoffs. They can do throw and chase situations in transition, and then they can also guard it at the other end because guys like Green can switch and have enough length to get to 3-point shooters, but have enough lateral quickness to also keep people out of the lane.
I love how you're talking about your adjustment for your personnel, because one of the things I noticed this year watching Arkansas play was that you guys did a great job of fronting the posts. Like, everyone thought that they were going to be able to pound the ball in the post against you guys because you were undersized. And I don't know the numbers on this, but I feel like when teams tried to throw the ball in the post against you, I bet it was like 0.5 points per possession because you guys swarmed the paint and you guys forced turnovers. Like, the backside help always rotated over as soon as the pass was released. I thought you executed that just incredibly well.
Yeah, we felt like the more we could encourage people to throw it in the post, the more steals and deflections we would get. Now, there were some bigs that hurt us. In particular, Perry at Mississippi State, although he got a lot of things at the mid post, meaning he'd catch that ball 2 or 3 steps off the post and hurt us. So there were times that we got hurt, but for the most part, that was oftentimes our best defense because sometimes teams overforce it into the post. We felt the same way at Nevada when we played that way, switching a pick and roll, and then someone tries to change their offense to try to ram it down inside in what is perceived as a mismatch. So certainly all that stuff becomes, really, really important that you have great weak side help if you're undersized and you try to front the post. And then there's certain, post front techniques that you need to work on as well. Whether it's hands up like goal posts and crab walking a guy back to the rim and those type of things are technique things that we work on all the time.
Thanks, Coach. We got one last question for you. So you had mentioned Kobe earlier, and we were all crushed by the loss of Kobe this year. We know that you coached against him, and were also the coach of the LA Defenders when he was with the Lakers. What's something you can tell us about Kobe or your relationship with him?
Yeah, Kobe was such a great competitor. The one story is it was after after a LA Defenders G League game, and I stayed in the office a little bit later than normal. I came out in the parking lot. There was only my car and his car. He rolled his window down and said, "Coach, is anybody else still in the building?" And I said, "No, there's just a security guard." Why? And he said, I don't want anyone in there while I'm shooting. And I said, "Well, Kobe, it was just me in there. You could have come in there." And he goes, "Nope, I wanted total privacy." And so he actually just sat in his car. I asked him how long he sat there, and he said about over almost an hour, because I was in there probably about 45 minutes longer than I normally am. But, just to see him in the weight room and his competitive nature in practice and, he wasn't, overly friendly. He just wanted to win. Like that was his thing, is just like, how do I win and how do I become the best player that I could possibly be? That's really what he was about. He's, again, one of the great, great, great competitors of all time.
Awesome. Well, that's the last stop on the bus today. Coach Muss, thank you so much for joining us.
Watson and Bones, thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on.
You can follow Eric Musselman on Twitter at Eric P. Musselman. You can follow Thunderbus on Twitter at Thunder_bus_pod. And you can find us on all the major podcast apps. Until next time, thanks for riding the bus this week, and Thunder up!